Coal power is slowly dying. As I know, here in Australia at the moment, with non-electric car fans, non-renewable fans, I'm enemy number one here in Australia right now, according to the media. However, the truth is this, and I know a lot of Australians are very scared of this fact: coal power is dying. The statistics actually prove it. Aside from the fact that solar and batteries are now cheaper than coal, basically almost everywhere in the world, 2024 was a remarkable year, which proved the point that I've been trying to get across to the public. If you work in the fossil fuel industry, in particular in the coal industry, I'm begging you, I'm literally, if I need to, I'll get down on my knees and beg you, retrain. You need to find another job. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm Sam Evans. You're watching the Electric Viking. It's great to have you with us. Weekend has been a pretty crazy time. I've heard from a lot of you, a lot of emails, messages, and yes, I have a video out explaining the insanity of what has been happening here. But before I get to that, more importantly, coal's very slow death has begun, with the world adding the smallest amount of coal-fired capacity in 2 decades, a report has said. Approvals for Chinese coal power plants have collapsed to nearly zero in 2024. What happens is this: old coal-fired power plants in China are being replaced with solar power and batteries because it's much, much cheaper. But in other places around the world, the same thing is happening. It's not just China, it's also Australia. The latest report by the Global Energy Monitor, as per reneweconomy.com.au, tracks the pipeline of new coal projects and found the world added only 44 gigawatts of coal capacity in 2024, a fraction of the 585 gigawatt hours of new renewable capacity installed last year. In fact, that 44 gigawatts doesn't make up for the actual amount of coal that was retired in 2024, which means that the amount of coal last year being burnt worldwide actually declined for the first time in decades. It found the rate of the Renew Economy says it found the rate the EU was retiring coal plants increased by a factor of 4, and noted the UK had become the 6th country in the world to kill off, completely phasing out coal power entirely, when the country that began the Industrial Revolution shut down its last coal plant last year. Coal is dead in the UK. New coal capacity was growing in India and tiny percentage-wise in China, but both countries are planning to build less, much less than previously, and in fact retire many old coal power plants. This is notable given the massive amount of solar China installed last year, allowing the country to hit its 2030 targets for solar 6 years ahead of schedule. Now, I should point out that China is 6 years behind schedule for its nuclear plants, which will probably never actually come to pass because they're just too expensive. The reason for that is obviously because solar and batteries have come down in cost so heavily, and those technologies now are also lasting much longer than they did before. So what about Australia? Well, Australia, says Renew Economy, received a mixed report card. There is only a single coal-fired power plant planned for Australia, the Collinsville Power Station in Queensland, a project described in the report as existing more on paper than in reality. In other words, it probably won't go ahead, very unlikely. Despite plans to begin construction next year, the report says the project has received no federal or state approvals, 0 funding approvals, no financing, and it's withdrawn its application to be connected to the grid. So it's not going to happen. Australia has received some interesting situations here where major banks are deciding not to fund any fossil fuel power plants. And the reason for this is not as what people think. Like, people will say to that, that's just being woke. Oh, F you, you're being woke. You guys are out of your minds. This is crazy. It's a disgrace. This wokeness for the renewables, it's nothing to do with wokeness. That's an emotional reaction. If you find yourself having that reaction, then you need to maybe have a good think about where your emotions are, get a good sleep, and start to try and think rationally, because it's got nothing to do with your emotions, nothing to do with wokeness. It's everything to do with dollars and cents. It's just about money. Follow the money. It's cheaper to build out solar and batteries, and coal power plants are making massive losses. It's just simply economics at this point in time. That's why banks really don't want to fund this stuff. They know there's going to be bankruptcies over the next 10 years. Some of the biggest coal power companies in the world have already gone bankrupt within the last 5 years, and they don't want to be a part of that. They want to mitigate their losses. Now, the Macquarie Bank joined a mass exit of North American financial institutions from the Net Zero Banking Alliance after the Trump administration began tearing up climate commissions and threatening to punish those who maintain them. So things are a bit different in the United States, unfortunately. Australia was singled out for sluggish action on climate change, with a report noting that 40% of Australia's coal capacity is expected to still be operational in 2035. But this report kind of doesn't really take into consideration the fact that those coal power plants are losing money, and really, the sooner they're turned off, the better off Australia will be financially. Coal is supposed to fall to just 1 gigawatt hours in Australia in 2035 under the country's step change scenario, limiting warming to 2 Celsius before being phased out completely in 2038. In my book, guys, I really think economically, and I'm speaking to other experts in the field, speaking to some real experts who really know what they're talking about much more than I do, it looks like there's a very high probability coal will be completely phased out, as in fossil fuels will be completely phased out in Australia by 2035. That even includes gas power plants as well. A massive take-up in solar, wind and hydro is driving the transition here in Australia, with more than 4 million Australians having solar and hundreds of thousands of them having their own home batteries. However, the new $2.4 billion investment into home battery incentives from the Labor government here, and a similar investment that is proposed by the Liberals as well, will mean an avalanche of battery installations over the next few years. That will massively help households to eliminate their electricity bills, and also to help the grid get away from its coal power plants. But here's the issue though. Australia's domestic CO2 emissions are estimated to be 60% below its emissions from coal exports, a contradiction that will grow as the country aims to lower domestic emissions but not coal exports, said the report. Australia is second only to Indonesia in terms of coal exports and third for proposed new coal mining capacity, behind coal giants China and India. So what this means is that the country's domestic CO2 emissions are estimated to be 60% below its emissions from coal exports. In other words, emissions here in Australia are going to plummet. They will, absolutely will, over the next 5 years. But unfortunately, our emissions that we're creating by shipping coal outside of Australia could in fact rise. That's quite damning. Now, fortunately, the countries that we're sending all this coal to are probably less likely to want that coal over the coming years because of their investments in solar, batteries, and wind power. For example, China is currently installing the equivalent of 5 nuclear power plants worth of renewable energy every single week. Climate Energy Finance founder Tim Buckley said the death of coal has been called many times, but now the numbers are actually showing the beginning of the end, particularly as the Chinese solar and wind juggernaut continues. It's going to be a slow death for coal, he said. It's not going to be rapid, but it is going to happen. The implications for Australia will be profound, said Buckley, with the country's economic policy seemingly built on the assumption its Asian trading partners would make no serious efforts to transition their economies to renewables. Unfortunately, it's true. Australia's economic policy isn't factoring in that our exports are going to decline enormously, considering the amount of coal we ship out. The demand for this coal is going to literally fall off a cliff. We don't, as a country, realise the magnitude of the threat to our key exports today, and our government continues to sleepwalk on the resources curse, he said. When you think about it, our number 2 export is LNG, as in natural gas. Our number 3 export is coking coal. Our number 4 export is thermal coal. We are structurally challenged if our key trading partners decide to honour their Paris climate agreements, or if they simply decide to save trillions of dollars. I've spoken to experts, and experts from Oxford University have also said that the world will save literally trillions and trillions of dollars. The number is so enormous, they're finding it hard to put a figure on it. The faster we move to renewables, the faster we save money. Buckley went on to say this: "We are working on the assumption our trade partners are going to abrogate their commitments. That's a very unrealistic assumption when you look at the cost of ignoring climate science." This report comes as Australia recorded its hottest 12-month period on record, says Royce from Renew Economy, ending with the hottest March on record, with temperatures above 2.41 Celsius, or temperatures 2.4 Celsius above average, according to the Bureau of Meteorology. We need to transition quickly. And maybe the world is not doing it quickly enough. I'm not sure. But the acceleration away from coal will happen. It's happening already. And the speed is only going to grow. Now, what I suggest to everyone, this is my personal advice, check where your 501k is invested. Check where your superannuation is invested. Make sure it's not in any coal companies. If it is, if it's in into major fossil fuel companies, remember, yes, oil companies will continue to exist. The world does need oil, even with electric cars and renewables, but it won't need anywhere near as much as what it has today. So the stock price of companies like Shell and BP and Chevron Mobil will fall. There's no question about it. But the stock price of some of these coal companies will collapse to near zero. They could potentially go bankrupt within a short period of time. So I'm trying to warn people, retrain. If you're working in these industries, retrain. If you're invested in these industries, get out as soon as you can. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.